Good morning, everybody. A great opportunity to be here and share a bit of my thoughts on how to solve the puzzle of rainwater management in close relation to what's happening with climate change and urbanization. So before I go off with telling you all kind of things, I would tell you a little bit about what I'm going to tell about. So first of all, I would like to share with you my situation when it comes to challenges in stormwater management in urban areas and in relationship with climate change. Then I would like to go to the Nordics situation with a based on the Denmark situation in general, and then also on a view on how to cope with that. And the second part will be zooming into that in more of the level of solution and best practice cases. So yeah, I would like to get started with a bit of introduction on myself and my situation when it comes to stormwater management. So my reality, I live in the Netherlands, in the west part near the coast. That is one of the most dense populated areas in Europe, which means that there is a lot of water demand, and that is rising because this area is actually getting more dense and dense. So more people, more water needed. But due to the fact that there are more people, there are more roads, there are more buildings, so the hard surface is increasing as well. That leads to more rainwater runoff, so water does just flow over the streets when it is really heavy rainfall, and that creates a risk of flooding, especially with limited capacity of our sewer systems. And the fact that water doesn't really infiltrate because of this hard surface leads to a limited groundwater recharge. And the effect here is that actually our soil is subsiding. As you can see in the middle picture, you see 30 centimeters and 30 to 200 centimeters. That is the amount of soil subsidence up to 2050 in this area. So at least a centimeter a year. And that is quite a lot, and that has significant impact also, yeah, on the infrastructure around us. Um, so that is an issue. Like the last 2 years, 3 years actually, we in summertime we have severe droughts. On the below picture, you can see a picture on my garden where you see it's totally dried out, and actually the effect of that is in general that there is an increased water demand during dry periods. Um, and on the very right picture, you see the exit of my garden during a heavy rainfall. So flooding is also an issue. So I need to cope with stormwater management and climate change myself as well. That is my personal situation, and I would like now to go a little bit to your situation, and doing that alongside a few questions. And I would like you to um, answer those questions. So the first one question, and you can answer that in a poll, is how much worse will heavy rain heavy rainfall become by 2100? So please give your response in the poll. Answer A, 10 to 20%. Answer B, 20 to 30%. Answer C, 30 to 40%. So I'm really curious what you think is the truth here. So I see some answers going in. There's quite a spread. Very interesting to see. Thank you very much for your responses. That's great to see. All right. Thank you. Let's go to the answer. So, well, there is an increase of heavy downpours. That can be expected. That's obvious also due to the answers. And the extreme precipitation will become even more extreme. So the number of downpours will increase, the extremity of the downpours will increase, and even worse, the most extreme will increase the most. So the damage to that, causing that, the flood risk caused by that, is getting worse. And well, in the end, that results indeed, as the majority says, in an overall heavy downpours will yield 20 to 30% more water than today. So I would say well done, 60% score of this audience. Very, very good. Um, so to summarize, we will have more extreme rainfall events, and that will increase flood risk. That's addressing challenge number one. So let's go to the next question. In the summer, in 2100, summer rainfall will increase, not change, or decrease? You can give your answers now in the poll. So will the summer rainfall increase in 2100? Will it not change, more or less the same as today, or will it decrease? What do you think? See a nice spread now. 50% says increase, 50% said decrease. The decrease is rising now in the results. Oh, you're getting convinced it's actually decreasing. Well, that's interesting to see. Well, you're totally right. Actually, the summer rainfall is decreasing 10 to 25%, and probably even more important to know is that there is also a clear tendency that the summer dry periods will be longer. So we will have less rainfall in general, but also have longer periods of droughts. And the results of those droughts is actually an increase of water demand. And there I come to the next challenge summary. Reduced rainfall and longer dry spells will actually increase the request for potable water, the use of potable water, not just in the volumes, but especially in peaks. We see in water use that, especially when people come home during a hot period, at the end of the day, they open the irrigation in the garden. They start using a lot of water, fill up pools. So also the peaks become troublesome. Not even so always the volume, but actually securing the supply indeed is becoming an issue during dry periods. So the second challenge, droughts. So let's go to the next question, and I'll start the poll for that as well. Why is maintaining groundwater levels important? Why is maintaining groundwater level important? Is that because of the need for potable water? Is it because we need green cities? Is it because to keep cities cool? Or is it to have durability of our buildings? So now it's published. Now you can give your answer. Is it to the need for potable water? It is due to water needs for green cities, water needs for cool cities, or water for durability of our buildings? A very nice spread, and well, I think we can see when it's 55% says it's potable water. Well, yes, that is true. Of course, the volume of water is important, that we have sufficient groundwater for water supply itself. That's about the volume, and in Denmark, that is the main source of drinking water. But also the quality of that water is important. If you look at salt intrusion, that means the salt water coming from the sea actually intervening with the fresh water that is pumped up for drinking water. That is a risk when the groundwater is lowered because the pressure is going down. And at the same time, we see that the sea level is rising, so actually the pressure from the salt water towards the fresh water is increasing. So it's very important also from quality perspective to keep high groundwater levels, as well as from the volume, the quantity perspective. But it's not the only good answer, because actually there is already an existing problem of overuse of groundwater. And if you want to keep a city green, which is very much needed, and I'll come back to that, for climate resilient cities, you will need some water as well. And for cooling down, you need some water as well. And actually, there will be an exacerbation of the need for water, and yeah, actually is very important to keep the groundwater levels up to actually be able to supply that when it's needed. And also the last answer is right, because the variability of groundwater may cause substantial soil substance, especially lowering of groundwater can cause that, and that impacts that can cause damage to infrastructure, for example, buildings or bridges or tunnels. They may subside with that. They can become damaged by cracks and things like that. So it's also important for our structures to manage our groundwater level in a proper way. So that is the third challenge, is keeping our groundwater levels up. Because we don't want them to be depleting, because that will cause scarcity of water, but also damage to our buildings and infrastructure. So my last question to you, that is about heat. How much hotter can cities be by 2100? How much hotter can cities be by 2100? Is it 3 to 5 degrees? Is it 3 to 10 degrees? Or is it 6 to 15 degrees? I'm really curious for your answers. Wow, 50% is now on the highs. Very curious what you think. I see the majority now choosing for 3 to 10 degrees, but 1/3 is already choosing also for 6 to 15 degrees. The majority is growing, nearly 60% choosing for 3 to 10 degrees. So let's go to the answer. The rise in annual temperature on average will be about 3 to 5 degrees. So that's answer A. However, if we look at cities, cities can be 3 to 10 degrees hotter even than the mean temperature due to, for example, lack of green space and the heat absorption of buildings, of asphalt, and others of these hard substances. So all in all, it's a combination of A and B, resulting in answer C. Cities can become 6 to 15 degrees hotter. And that is of course an issue of comfort, but it's also a serious issue of health. Because there's not an example of 2018 in Denmark. There are reports that the extreme urban heat was responsible for 250 deaths in Denmark. So that is really a severe thing. It's not just comfort. This is a serious health issue. So we should really try to manage the temperature in cities. So in the end, the general temperature rise as well as the urban heat island effect create heat stress in cities. So that is the fourth challenge I would like to talk about with you today. So what should we do about this when it comes to stormwater management? That's what I would like to talk to you about in a sec. But if we look at this, the conclusions overall: more rainfall, more extreme, drier summers, hotter cities, scarcer water. Our systems are not built for this. They have been designed in general 20, 30 years ago. That's the average age, or maybe even older, of these water supply and sewer systems. So we really need to do something to manage this. Can we do this in a traditional way? Well, for example, can we just make all our pipe systems bigger? Make the drainage pipes bigger, make our water supply pipes bigger. That would really, really be a lot of cost. It will take a lot of time, and it will take a lot of space. And it doesn't actually solve the issue of water scarcity, because you can make all your pipes bigger, but actually you should also make your resources bigger. So you probably need to invest in alternative ways of creating drinking water, having maybe even desalination plants, things like that. Well, if I'm thinking in that traditional way, I think it's simply impossible. It's too big of a challenge. So I'm convinced we should think differently. And I would like to share with you how we look at that from a Wavin perspective. So I was very much inspired, and I do fully agree also with, for example, something the Mayor of London is stating in his water strategy. We should be more creative when it comes to flood risk. We should slow down our water from the rain to the drain, so protecting our sewers from being overloaded. And we should actually start using rainwater because we need alternatives for just using potable water. And in general, we should try to reduce the need for potable water as well. So, well, we've translated this as well into our own strategy. And then it comes to what do we want to do is we want to delay rainwater runoffs to reduce flood risk. We want to recharge groundwater because it's very important as a resource, but also for our infrastructure. We want to promote reusing rainwater, make water available, rainwater available as an alternative for potable water. We would like cities to be greener because they create healthier, more attractive and cooler cities, which is very important. Prevent pollution from rainwater going straight into the environment, and embracing new technologies to actually solve these problems, and develop also products that do have less impact on climate change, so making our products more circular. I'd like to show you a short animation on the challenges discussed, and an extra one on pollution. I'd like to share that with you on how we cope with, how we view this from Wavin. So have a look. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and it gave you an impression on what we're aiming for. I'm trying to load my presentation again. Somehow oops. Yes, there I am again. I hope this video showed you on how we want to cope with climate change and rainwater management. Um, in the end, what we are aiming at as WAVEN is realizing that climate changing is happening. We want to get cities ready, ready for the future, ready for the climate change that will happen, making cities resilient. So I already gave you a bit of a view on how we do this. I would like to elaborate a little bit more on that. So um, how do we build climate resilient cities? And I would like to share with you a few solutions that we would like to offer for this, as well as some examples of projects on how we've done this in the past. I would like to start with the subject of infiltration. Infiltration is a very important way, as I think explained before as well, because we create a delay of the rainwater runoff and we recharge our groundwater resources. Of course, if it is possible, you can do this on the surface with swales or some more natural landscaping. But in many cases, there's just not the space to do that, not on the premises of a development, or um, not at all because of the dense infrastructure. So you need to go below ground. And in that case, I would say the preferred way of coping with rainwater is creating an infiltration tank. Because of the recharge of the groundwater, reducing the stress on quantity and quality, and it also reduces the amount of water flowing into the sewer system. So that is also benefiting the robustness of a sewer system. If we look at those systems, they are when it comes to design, they are dependent on the soil conditions. So actually, the surrounding soil of a tank defines how much water can flow out. There's a certain speed of water from the tank going into the ground, certain speed through the ground that is possible. That is, in scientific terms, the hydraulic conductivity, often referred to as a K value. And then the shape of the tank creates a certain surface of exchange from the tank towards the soil. Multiplying these two will give an infiltration rate, a flow going into the ground. Well, a tank in generally should be empty in like 24 hours or so. It depends a little bit on local regulations, but yeah, you can calculate based on this if how much surface you need actually to be able to exchange all the water that's going into the tank. And of course, the severity, the design values of the rainfall is also defining the full volume. So there are quite some parameters defining how a infiltration tank should look like. And yeah, of course, we can help if needed to make designs that fit for purpose. That is a basic thing. I would like to show an example of a project that we did with our brand new product, an AquaCell. This is at a school. You can clearly see this is sandy soil, so it's perfect for infiltration because it has a high K value. Water will infiltrate very fast into the ground. Um, but that is not always the case. However, it is the preferred solution. So imagine if you could make infiltration tanks in all soil conditions, even if the soil has a very low K value and infiltration is not going as fast as you would need it to be to get a tank empty in time. Then you can actually always recharge your groundwater resources. You can always try to keep the groundwater as high as possible to prevent salt intrusion. You can reduce your discharge to the sewer because you're infiltrating it. And when making it smart, and that's what we want to do, you can make it future proof because you can actually manage your water more actively optimizing it for the situation as is. So how would that work? Normally, an infiltration tank, as you see here in the middle, would just be filled with water, and water will flow down through the sides and the bottom. And if we make it smart, there will be an alarm. Your tank is not yet empty because well, due to the fact that the infiltration is going slow, there will be an alarm. Rain is coming. Your tank is not empty enough to actually catch that rain, and that alarm is based on historic data of the tank itself. It's based on the weather forecast. It's based on on the air pressure, and it takes a few of those parameters into account into an algorithm to always have a safe prediction of the heaviest rainfall possible, and making sure that volume of water is available in your tank. So when that alarm is given, a valve is opened, and then the tank is drained with the restricted outflow to limit it to the maximum that is allowed according to the regulations. And then the tank is empty, and then rain can come and fill it up again, and that water can again infiltrate. In 95% of the cases, even in poor soil conditions, I would expect that you can actually still infiltrate. So this is really a security for the extreme rainfalls, and at the same time allowing infiltration to take place in many, many more projects than we would standard apply them. Another alternative for delaying groundwater. First, let me just wrap up with this one. Sorry. If we want to allow infiltration in poor permeable soils, when would this be a good idea? If you have trouble with managing flood risk due to rainfall, if there is a poor permeable soil, obviously, and of course, if you should take measures because of the groundwater due to the scarcity, due to salt intrusion, or sinking cities, sinking infrastructure, and also when there's limitations to actually connect to a sewer system. Um, all of that would be reasons to use a system like this. And those also very nicely connect to the Sustainable Development Goals. It is actually creating, securing water supply by making sure the resources are recharged. It is innovating in our cities using more smart technology. It's making the cities more sustainable and also uh, climate proof, so to say. There is an alternative way to delay water as well, and that is attenuation. An attenuation tank looks more or less the same as an infiltration tank, only the tank is sealed, so water cannot go out. You just have a buffer volume, and you will just slowly release water going into the sewer to the rates that are allowed, not to overcharge the sewer. You can do this in different ways, just by a standard orifice, a small hole that is actually limiting the maximum flow, or with a vortex valve, for example, where also the maximum flow is the same, but with lower levels in the tank, the discharge will be higher, so you have shorter emptying times, which can be important with sequential rainfalls. Well, the drain down time of a tank in the end is depending on the volume of water, of course, that needs to be drained, but also on the way that is chosen to regulate. And what is the maximum outflow allowed. Also there, if you need help, we can help you to design a tank fit for purpose. But that would just be holding water, draining it down. And here you see an example of a tank perfectly sealed in a geomembrane, and as a protection around it, a geotextile. This is a very nice volume of water. When it's raining, it fills up. When it's heavy raining, it's filling up. But 95% of the time, it's empty. And all the water that's going in, we waste it. We just discharge it again. How nice would it be if you could actually just use the water and hold it there when it's possible, and make sure the tank is empty when it's needed? Well, that is what I think would be a much more ideal solution, and we can apply the same technology as we do for infiltration systems. We can actually reduce the need for potable water if we would use the water in an attenuation tank as an alternative source. And you don't need any extra tank to actually collect that water because you have already a huge space below ground. You reduce the discharge to the sewer because in most cases you can just have an empty tank because you're reusing it instead of draining it to the sewer. And by being able to manage it, monitoring your tank all the time, you can make sure yeah, you have a future-proof system because you can actually steer much more accurately. So how would that work? I would like to show a short video on that as well. So there is again a warning sent to the tank. It is going to rain. Then the valve opens and drains down the tank. When the tank is empty, the rain is coming, and the rain can again fill up the tank. And then again, that water can be used for example, flushing toilets, but also other purposes, irrigation or car washing or whatever you can think of. So um, that is also a way of reducing the need for regular drinking water. Well, this of course should be applied when you need an attenuation tank with flood risk, but at the same time, if your resources for potable water are at stake, and it will be especially interesting, of course, if you're using a lot of water, because then it's also a cost. It's not just a future proofing, but it's also an economic benefit that you can get there. The large water users are, for example, schools. When you have like 1,000 pupils flushing toilets 3-4 times a day, we talk about significant volumes of water, and often they have quite some roof surface where you can actually collect the water from for this reuse system. And especially if you have limited space, then you can just do this just with one tank. And again, this is very much also in line with ambitions of your UN Sustainability Development Goals. So I think these are nice ways of actually adding technology to existing technology and making them more future proof when it comes to climate resilient cities. Next, I would like to go to another example, a case study of combining blue and green actually. So now we have just been talking about smart system. This is just going to be a system which is fairly traditional, but the way we cope with it makes it actually very nicely fitting to make cities climate resilient. This is a project in Wolfsburg in Germany. You know, the city where Volkswagen is being built. And we had a close cooperation. We had a co-design together with the architect of the project and the engineer of the project. That was quite an ambitious vision when it comes to climate, but also to other things like scenery and nature. And when it comes to climate, it's really to prevent heat stress, drought, flooding, and they wanted to do this with creating a sort of a microclimate. And how did they do this, or how did we do this all together in the end? So this is the overview of the new build area, and that is draining all the way to the middle. And in the middle of this area, there are two green squares where water is flowing to. So all the water is collected on this green squares. There's hardly any piped sewer. Everything is surface runoff. So here you see an example of this green square. It's really a nice recreation ground, but it's also like the water buffer for the area, so it can be flooded if there is an extreme rainfall. And yeah, it would be actually very deep if you would need to have all the water during an extreme rainfall event buffered on the top of this. So together we thought, well, how can we manage this in a better way? Well, put a tank below it. So create some surface above the ground, but also create a lot of surface below the ground. And then you get sort of this picture. So you have a green area where people can recreate in normal circumstances, and where water will flow through, feeding the green areas, giving evaporation, which is cooling down the area. Water can infiltrate through the ground. There, it's also filtered, and then you can get clean water into an attenuation tank in this case, because groundwater levels were already high, and actually too high. So here we chose for an attenuation tank, and from there it's clean water can be discharged into the environment again to open water. So a very nice example, I would say, of combining a traditional tank with landscaping and architecture, making it really a green and blue solution with a clean, a safe, and a comfortable microclimate. Well, this is already a first step towards also greenifying cities. And another important thing to make cities greener is make sure there are trees in cities. And to make trees grow, you need to let the roots thrive, and then you can have really flourishing trees. And I would like to elaborate a little bit more on that. But not before I told you about the benefits of urban trees. The International Organization of Agriculture is actually stating a list of benefits of urban trees. That is just a well-being. People think it's nice to have trees around them, but it's also healthier because trees filter all kind of gases like CO2, but also particulate matter, which is not a very healthy thing as well. It is a robust thing towards climate change because it's cooling. Important, as we've seen it with the increasing heat up to 15 degrees in the city, but it's also reducing flood risk because they absorb a lot of water, and they evaporate that as well. So it's like an air conditioning, and that creates also a conservation of energy. Up to 20 to 50% of energy can for cooling can go down when there are sufficient trees in a city. And it increases property value up to 20%. So it's also an economic interesting thing, and it's good for biodiversity, for ecology in the cities. And well, as a food and agriculture organization, you should also say, of course, it's giving opportunities for food and nutrition, which not always be the case, of course, but it's interesting to have that look. Well, is this just a theoretical thing? No, not at all. Copenhagen wants more trees. Milan is really ambitious, 3 million trees they want to plant. Paris is really ambitious. They want to plant 1.2 million trees or so. The European Union is even more ambitious, also a larger space. They want to plant 3 billion trees in the next 10 years. So, of course, that can be forests, but that will also be in cities. One of the plans of 10,000 trees in a small city of Dunkirk in France. So this is happening everywhere. Trees are a very important part of the solution towards climate resilient cities. However, trees in cities, is that always a good idea? Yes, they have the good effects, but they also create problems. Damage and danger due to roots. They break the asphalt. They create cracks. They create speed bumps because those trees, if the roots do not have sufficient water, not sufficient air, or not sufficient space, they will seek it somewhere. And if it's not below ground, they will find it above ground, and that's what you see on these pictures, and that's actually a trouble. So it's something to do about. But the trees itself themselves also have a problem, because they need to face the droughts that are coming up all the time. So there is a lot of hard surface in urban areas, especially, so there's no water infiltrating into the soil. So they do not get water. Then in urban areas, the topsoil is generally building sand, which is just very hard compacted, so there's no space actually for the roots to penetrate through. It doesn't contain any nutrition for the tree, so actually it's quite a severe circumstance for tree to grow in an urban environment, and that's what you see in these pictures as well. Newly planted trees already dying very fast, a need to actually water trees, using valuable water resources actually, which especially in dry periods are so much needed. So yes, trees are good, but they have some challenges, and we would like to overcome those with tree tanks. A tree tank basically is a below ground tank which we fill up with soil that is very good for a tree. The roots can grow through more easily. It has the nutrition the trees need. It has some aeration and some irrigation inside. And at the same time, there is our Cubic Plus system actually taking over the support of densely compacted sand that is normally used in city areas. So we have this stability, and we have a lot of experience with that already for about 25 years with our units. Um, and at the same time, we create space for our roots, so actually the trees can thrive. Here's an example on where we did this, even in the most severe circumstances, on a podium deck, on a hard surface. Here you can see on the bottom that our Cubic Plus are laid with their columns up, so they're open for filling, and in the back you can see a tank with just a small open space where you can plant a tree in. So how does that look in practice? Well, this is an example of in Belgium that we've done. You can see there's a huge row of tree tanks where there's open space which will be filled with special sand for or special soil for the trees. And then when it's all covered, the result you see on the right side, you see nicely growing trees with the ideal conditions that they need. And here you see another one, a big tree being planted in a tree tank, and in the end, standing there tall, thriving. Very important to have trees, and yeah, with this solution we can make trees happen even in these trees, the circumstances for urban environments which are not ideal for trees. So last, not totally last, pre-last subject is, well, I'm talking about a few examples on how we manage our stormwater. That's all based on infiltration and attenuation units. We have a Cubic Plus, which is our optimal solution. It is super fast to install. I would probably say it's the fastest in the market, but it's also a very durable solution. The way we connect all the things together makes it, well, in any case you will install it right, so it's a robust system, but it's also optimized for maintenance in the future, so you can secure in the future also that your tank will always be working. You can properly inspect it and properly maintain it, clean it, make sure that you can keep on benefiting from the volume that you've created with a tank like that. We also have a simple solution for green areas, for households, for below your personal parking at your house. We even deliver those pre-wrapped, small size, for do-it-yourself practice as well. The AquaCell Lite. And then we have our new AquaCell, which is really the practical solution. It's a very efficient unit when it comes to logistics. It means that you will have fewer deliveries to your site, easing logistics, but also fewer space on site needed, but also due to that, a lower CO2 emissions because less trucks need to drive. It is very easy to install. It's probably as easy as Cubic Plus. It's nearly as fast as Cubic Plus, and it's also a sustainable solution because this is made out of recycled material. I'll come back to that in a second. So sustainability is one of the other pillars that I mentioned. So when it comes to stormwater management within Wavin, since 2015, we're only developing products in recycled material, unless it is not possible or for whatever reason. That means, as said, the new AquaCell is a 100% recycled product, but also 100% recyclable, um, without compromising quality. In the past, I know that there is always the conviction if you have virgin plastics, it's always better. But nowadays, with the advance of technology, we can make very, very good products, comparable quality to virgin plastics out of recycled material. This product is also fully tested according to the European standard, showing that it's a really robust product. Also, our road gully, our Tegra road gully, is a fully recyclable product. Unfortunately, in the Nordics, we have to make it out of virgin material. It's really a pain in my heart, but the Nordic Polymark is not allowing recycled plastics, and hopefully in the future they will, also for the sake of combating climate change and being more sustainable. And the nice thing about this product as well is that it's preventing pollution with the unique filter that is inside. The white thing you can see here in the picture, that actually makes sure it prevents that street dirt is freely flowing into rivers and lakes. That's of course something we would like to prevent as well. So last but not least, we do not just have units. We have a complete system portfolio, from catching the rainwater from the roof or the road, all the way to draining it to open water or towards a treatment plant or whatever, with roof drainage, road gullies, pipe systems, infiltration units, and also the filters needed to make sure the water quality is guaranteed. So we really have a broad portfolio, and of course, if you're interested, we would really like to help you offering a complete solution. So thank you for listening. Thank you. I hope that you also learned a lot out of this webinar. I'm very curious if there are any questions. Um, Last thing I would like to say before answering questions is, climate change is happening. Let's get these cities ready, and let's do that together.
Thank you, Reggio. We had some sound issues. I hope everybody has their sound back. During your presentation, we did get a couple of questions. First one, we have a question on how to handle pollution when installing infiltration.
Very good question. If you would just have a infiltration tank, then of course it's important to manage that this tank is not getting clogged. It is important that water is collected via proper gullies. It's not just the coarse material that you need to filter, like plastic running from the street, or caps of bottles, or bottles itself, or cans. It's also the fines, and those fines can be collected if you have a sufficient sand trap in your gullies. So that is a very important one. Have gullies with sand trap in front of that. We can even offer more solutions where you have a large silt trap in front of it when the circumstances are really that you have a lot of fines flowing off the surface. In that way, you secure water from flowing in that is polluted and or that is dirty, and that can clog your tank. And then secondly, you can never 100% prevent that. So I would always recommend to have a tank where you have the opportunity to clean it during the lifetime. Generally, these tanks are designed for 50, 60, sometimes 100 years. So being able to access into it, check whether it works as it should, and then clean it, that would be very important in my opinion as well.
Yes, we have also another question and a remark. You use a lot of plastic. Don't you have more sustainable materials to work with?
Um, we use a lot of plastic, but as said, we are aiming to use only recycled plastic. So the products that we are recently developing are made out of waste, basically. They are really sorted by our suppliers from waste and upgraded to a level that we can again use them in our products. So there is a lot of plastic available, and I think it's a very sustainable. Actually, if we look at plastics, this plastic still has value when it has become waste, because it's actually a source for a new product. And if you look at like that, recycled materials are very sustainable actually, and yeah, therefore it's also very much a pain for me that the Nordic Polymark is not allowing recycled plastic, because they actually steer us towards using new plastics all the time. However, we would actually not want to do that when not really necessary, and it's not necessary in stormwater management.
So thank you for joining, and hope to see you again sometime at our next webinar.